This episode may contain adult themes and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Sorry.
What's the trick in making my love stick? What's the trick?
Hello, and welcome to the Film Critic and the Common Man podcast. While other film podcasts might kill terrorists, we always end up killing one with comically tiny feet. Every episode, we discuss a film from the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of a common man. We may not agree, but it certainly won't be boring. I'm your co-host, Ben Miller. I write about films for my own site, Ice Cream for Freaks, and I'm a member of the North Texas Film Critics Association, as well as the International Film Society Critics. You can hear me guest on other pods of the David Thewlis of podcasting. I'm joined by my brother and common man co-host, a man who always knows the importance of keeping his shoes on, Mr. Jake Miller. How you doing, buddy?
Man, you got it. You freaking nailed it. I am going to talk about the importance of quality footwear way longer than I should.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into it a lot, but I mean, something as simple as not having shoes on is such a big difference.
You're fucked.
I mean, we talked about the Forrest Gump episode. It's like, what's the most important thing Lieutenant Dan has? Take care of your feet, because he's not wrong. And
words of wisdom.
The words of wisdom. 23 episodes later, we are keeping on with our Christmas miniseries, and today we have the least Christmassy one, but actually occurring on Christmas Eve the entire time. Regardless, it is Die Hard. We are talking about the classic Die Hard today, the original, directed by John McTiernan, written by Jeb Stewart and Stephen E. DeSouza, based on the book Nothing Lasts Forever by Roderick Thorpe, starring Bruce Willis, Alan Rickman, Alexander Godunov, Bonnie Bedelia, and Reginald Vell-Johnson, co-starring a bunch of people that kind of had a good run through the 90s and because of this movie. Paul Gleason, Devereaux White, Clarence Gilliard, James Shigeta, Hart Bochner, Grant L. Bush, Robert Davey, and William Atherton. Opened on July 15th, 1988. It's hilarious. This July movie that's set on Christmas Eve, but regardless, July 15th, 1988. Really blown away by how much money it made compared to what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be like, oh, this made $350 million. It only made $82 million domestic. Really surprising. Now for 1988, huge success, but still $82 million domestic, 58 international, 140 million on a budget somewhere in the realm of 25 to $35 million. Was nominated for 4 Oscars. Best sound effects, editing, film editing, and visual effects, all very well, the kind of things you would expect from an action movie.
Right.
Interestingly, the thing that really surprised me is Rotten Tomatoes, 94% critics, 94% audience.
Yeah, they rarely line up that well,
especially for like an action movie. It's incredible for a movie to sync up like that.
Yeah, it usually seems like the action films high on audience, low on critics.
And this is one of the most critically adored action movies of all time for good reason. So we're going to get into a lot of stuff about this movie. We could go into it a lot of different type of things. I will give a quick plot summary real quick of Die Hard from the year 1988. So Die Hard is on Christmas Eve. New York police detective John McClane arrives in Los Angeles to meet his wife, who is there working. His wife, Holly, played by Bonnie Bedelia, at a party held by her employer, the Nakatomi Corporation, the Nakatomi Building, Nakatomi Plaza. So he's taken there by a limo driver, Argyle, who is just, so he's kind of waiting out to see what happens, if he's going to like hang out with his wife or have to get a hotel or something like that. He goes up there, meets his wife. It's a little bit of tension, a little bit of sweetness, but it's kind of in limbo at this point. And little do they know that
they're separated at the time.
Yeah.
So,
but at the same time, that little scene where they're like, kids would love to have you and I'd love to be there. I missed you. And then they start fighting again. Like, so that's always that. So McClane is changing his clothes, and his this guy in this idiot in the plane's like, you got to make fist with the balls of your feet. that it's like better than a cup of coffee in a shower. So he does that. So he takes off his shoes. And at the same exact time, terrorists led by Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, heavily armed men come in, kill security guards, and pretty much take over the whole floor and the whole building. McClane is able, thanks to two people having sex in a different room, is able to escape out of Holly's office and into the stairs and just kind of get away without anybody knowing he was there. So he's secluded from everybody else, and the terrorists are up there. Gruber takes Holly's boss, Mr. Takagi, and essentially tells him, it's like, we don't care about terrorism or anything like that. We actually want the money in your vault, and you have the access to this. And it's like, no, I don't have the whole access. So they kill him, and they start trying to access the vault. And McClane is kind of going around in the side, just kind of stay out of the way, and then is trying to alert people downstairs, calls a fire alarm. So he starts picking away at terrorists one by one, and the cops eventually show up, led by Al, Reginald Val Johnson, Carl Winslow, as he will forever be known. It's seeing him in a cop uniform, you're just like, well, there's Carl. Like, it's just it's Reginald Val Johnson's gift and curse. But regardless, so Al Pal is there, and he is the terrorists are kind of like do a really good job of deflecting any problems. But McClane throws a dead body onto his car, and then they start lighting up the car. And so cops converge. It's a big mess, and press shows up. And Al is talking back and forth with McClane through the CB, and Hans is talking back and forth with McClane through CB, trying to figure out everything that's going on, trying to get a lay of the land of everything. Essentially, they figure out he's running around, he's killing terrorists. He blows up a part of the building with C4, then meets Hans, but is able to get away. Not having shoes, they shoot a bunch of glass, and he steps through it. It's a big mess. The FBI shows up, which Hans anticipated, and the FBI cuts the power to the building, which actually releases the vault. The plan being that they're going to send all the hostages up to the roof. Whenever the FBI lands there, they're going to blow the roof up. They don't know what's going on, and they were going to escape in an ambulance. McClane throws a wrench into all that plans. The roof still explodes, but McClane's able to get away. Hans finds out about Holly, takes her hostage. McClane comes and rescues her, shooting a guy who is, believe it or not Huey Lewis. He looks just like Huey Lewis.
Yeah.
It's every time I see him, I don't know his name. I just see him and go, hey, it's Huey Lewis. But so he kills him and then shoots Hans, but Hans tries to pull Holly off the building. He is able to release her watch, and Hans falls to his death. They get down. Everything is hunky-dory. But Carl, the second in command, Alexander Goodenough, is kind of comes back from the dead like a zombie, about to kill McClane. Al, who was trepidatious about shooting because he previously killed a kid, shoots Carl, and everybody walks away happy. And the end. There's some dead people, but generally a pretty good outcome of everything. There is so much to get into with this movie.
Just real quickly before I forget.
Yes.
Whenever he says, I killed a 13-year-old kid, I couldn't see. I thought he had something.
It's a ray gun or something like that.
I was like, it was Steve Urkel.
Well,
that's why Family Matters ended when it did. He smoked Steve Urkel.
It's funny. It's funny having the idea of, if you put it in the historical context of a 1988 black LAPD officer accidentally shooting a kid, and he's just like, oh, I made a mistake, but it's no big deal. I'm just a cop. I just don't like pulling my gun anymore. I'm like, you're still a cop? Like, it's like there's a lot to go there. Like, but
especially the events of like the last 15 years. You're like,
Rodney King's 3 years after this. Like, okay, yeah. So this is the thick of all that. So yeah, but there's a
it's and as we mentioned, LA Confidential, like
yeah.
that was the end of controversy. Like,
And the LAPD lived happily ever after. Exactly. Yeah. It's the same thing. This is exactly
all Carl from Family
now.
Matters.
That being said, this is by no means cop propaganda. They're like,
not really
like the SWAT team that tries to go in are a bunch of idiots. Al seems like he knows what's going on, but he's more of like a down to earth guy. The deputy chief, played by that's Paul Gleason, Dwayne T. Robinson. He's more of a politician than he is a cop. I'm sure you're very familiar with. I'm sure you're very familiar with more of those political minded guys than they're actually cops. Yeah. So I mean, those type of guys, and then the FBI guys thinking they know everything and actually don't. And the big thing about this movie is, again, historical context as far as where they were in the sense of this. Like, so Bruce Willis had not really starred in a movie. He was on a TV show at this point, Moonlighting, very successful TV show, got a couple of Emmys. But at this point, he had not really had been a star of a film. And they gave him an unprecedented salary. It was like $7 million. It was like unprecedented.
In 88?
In 88. It was unheard of for a guy who's never been in a movie before. Well, this movie works specifically because of his own self-loathing and there at the time, you got to think of the time of what the 80s were like. It was all Stallone and Schwarzenegger and these larger than life guys. And Bruce Willis is a pretty normal looking guy. I mean, he's in good shape, don't get me wrong, but he's just a cop. He's not a super cop. He's not jacked to the gills. He's not doing inhuman things. He's just a guy who gets the crap beat out of him the whole time. And that makes it work.
Yeah. And also, like, just his human vulnerability is exposed early on, where it's like, okay, this guy's having marriage problems and misses his kids.
Everything's not going good for this guy.
No. And I will say, like, especially in law enforcement, having that work and family conflict, very common. So marriages frequently fall apart. And
I mean, that's what he tells Argyle on the way there is like, I got a 6-month backlog of New York guys. I like, even the guys I've arrested, they're still waiting trial and all this kind of stuff. And they like, I can't just leave. Like so I understand that part, but Willis in general, there was this one scene that I couldn't help but notice. This thing that Willis does is when he's creeping around. I think whenever Takagi gets shot and he's kind of creeping around the court, he's like crawling on the ground. He does this thing with his mouth where he's got this like this weird mouth, rounded mouth thing. I don't know what it is. But it's so specific to Willis. And I'm like,
it's a Willis thing.
I don't even think about it. I'm just like, it works. And his, like you said, his vulnerability, picking glass out of his feet as Al tells him about shooting the kid and he feels bad. And then he talks about, 5 minutes later, he talks about, if I die, to tell my wife, all this kind of stuff. And it's just, he does everything right. The other thing that makes this movie work, and probably the thing that I have the most fondness of, is Han/Alan Rickman. He is so good in this movie. Alan Rickman, by the way, his first movie ever. He was on Broadway for a really long time. He was in England and doing stage work, and he had popularized the male lead in Dangerous Liaisons, Valmont. So he was renowned for it, getting all sorts of awards attention. They just like, hey, we're going to make an adaptation of this movie for American audiences. It's like, great. Yeah, we got Glenn Close and Michelle Pfeiffer in it. It's like, cool. I'm going to be the lead, right? And they're like, no. So they gave it to John Malkovich, and movie was a huge success. But Alan Rickman was just like, okay, I guess I'm just going to be this kind of actor. And they pulled him out and put him in this. And that was history. He is so good.
Yeah, I will say he nails the foreign bad guy role.
Yes.
But I may disagree with you here. Is something I thought about is his character in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yes.
Are they different?
Okay, so
except that he's in medieval times in Robin Hood, and then
so in this,
I'm like, it's almost the same.
So one of the things in this movie that I really like about it is he is ruthless, willing to kill absolutely anything to achieve his goals, but still very suave and articulate. He's very intelligent. I love thinking about Robin Hood and Alan Rickman in it because the producers and director of Robin Hood really wanted Alan Rickman to play this role. And they're like, hey, come read our script. And he's like, nope, don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. He's like, nope, I absolutely do not want to do it. And they're like, well, you can change some things. And Alan Rickman goes, no, I want to do whatever I want to do. And they go, okay. And they let him do whatever he wants to do. So everything you see on screen, that's out of Rickman's head. And he just goes, I'm going for it. And that's what makes the movie so interesting. As like, because he's just doing his thing. And
he plays a great, he's a suave, intelligent bad guy.
Yes. And at the same time, from what I understand, rest in peace, by the way, died a couple of years ago, but
oh, did he?
He passed away, I want to say 3-4 years ago. From what I understand, the sweetest human on the planet.
Really?
Apparently him and Bonnie Bedelia, who plays Holly, had lunch every day and we're just talk back and forth about acting and just sweetheart of a man. And then even on Robin Hood, the chaos of that, he was really sweet. And then I like watching him in movies where he is sweet because generally Sense and Sensibility, it's kind of a old timey movie. That's a good one where he's a sweet guy. Harry Potter too.
Actually,
he was Emma Thompson's cheating husband.
That's right.
Yes. So, I mean, he always has that kind of inherent darkness to him, even though he has he's like, I'm suave. And it's like, it's kind of, he's almost typecast and you're just like, well, you can't be all the way nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really more realistic. I mean, he's more realistic as a character.
Absolutely.
Are any of us completely good?
Yeah. And I mean,
you know what I mean? There's evil, there's different motivations. We all have our flaws.
And Hans's evil is even like, well, what idiot put you in charge? You did. Oh, you really caught me off guard. It's like, that's a good point. I should probably start taking care of these people back to the bathroom because I don't want people peeing on each other. Like, okay, very obvious. Like, it's not necessarily like he doesn't have to.
And there's a pregnant lady that Holly brings up, and he's like, "We'll take a sofa down."
Yeah. It's like, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, he keeps all these things in mind and knows all this kind of stuff, and the general refinement of all. It's like he makes this movie for me. Like whenever I think of this movie, I love Hans and I love Alan Rickman. That being said,
you can't have a good guy without a bad guy.
Can't have a good guy without a bad guy, and so. I'd read something about this movie. So Bruce Willis was still doing his TV show Moonlighting at the time. So he was working like 17-hour days and he was so exhausted at times. He would be on set and the director would be like, work with the writers, like, okay, let's give Bruce a break and let's expand everybody else. And so as that, it made everybody else that much more interesting. So we talked about Alexander Godunov, the Carl, the long-haired number 2 in charge, plays a great like hulking psychopath. And then Carl's brother, Paul Gleason, obviously Devereaux, right down in the down the limo driver Argyle. Theo, obviously where your son is named after. Clarence Gilliard, he passed away last week.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a rough couple
I
of years for the
know.
Die Hard people.
Everyone's dying.
Yes. So Clarence Gilliard is Theo. He's a lot of fun. Oh my God, the quarterback is toast. But I want to talk about one guy more than anyone else, and that's Hart Bochner. You don't know Hart Bochner, but man, he is so slimy as Ellis, and he's you talk about a guy. He's like, okay, so who am I? I am a yuppie cokehead who is in love with Holly, and I think I know what's going on. And and they're like, yep, spin him up and send him out, and he is great. He's so good.
He is great at being probably the most hateable character in this movie.
He's so
even
awful.
Over the murderous terrorists.
It's the only death where you're just like, yes,
Thank
victory.
God.
Okay, so that scene specifically where he's trying to impress Hans and it's like work through. Why do you think they bring him a soda? Have you thought about it? Because I thought about it and I have a theory.
I would say it's the same thing as whenever like we would do interrogations of people, and it was, you need a water or a coffee. It's rapport building and boost their ego. Okay. And they went the ego route. It was like, obviously this guy's, oh yes, sir, we'll get you a Coke and all that. And then that's their end to fucking play with them.
I think it's dumber than that. I think he turned to them and said, hey, y'all got some Coke? And they brought him a soda.
I didn't think about that angle.
And he's like,
you're probably right.
Everything he does, John Boy, obviously doing the lines of Coke, talking about just like, show him the watch and never thought I'd like to hear. He's so terrible, but at the same time, he plays it to such a T. Still acting consistently, did a little directing in the 90s, but Hart Bochner, big winner in this one. So is there like, I really like Reginald Vell Johnson, and obviously, Bonnie Bedelia plays a really interesting role because I think Holly could really easily come across as a shrew or a wet blanket. And and she really balances like, oh, I like Holly. Like she knows what she's doing. She's good at her job.
Yeah. And it's kind of, and plus things were different in 88 than they are now.
Sure. A working woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A working, successful woman, that was a bit more unusual. And I think it's something a lot of people have to struggle with is like I said, that work and family balance. And at that time,
my wife makes more money than me. Oh, yeah.
My wife is more than welcome to go make way more money than me.
My wife supported me for years. I was in school and I was like, by all means, like, I do not have the ego to be like, no, exactly. I have to make more. Like, if you make more money than me, by all means, like, but
what's yours is mine and what's mine is yours. And so it's a team effort. And
yeah, exactly.
Hey, nowadays it's pretty easy for us to go.
We can just say that.
Hey, go make that cheddar, boo boo.
Yeah, exactly.
But back then it was.
But Holly in this movie, she's not a wet blanket. She doesn't suck, and at the same time, the cool thing this movie does is it really recognizes the relationship and the comfort they have between each other, because the final scene when McClane has the gun taped to his back and Hans has the gun to Holly's head, and Hans makes the motherfucker line, and then they start laughing maniacally. She's like, something's up. Like, it's not like he didn't just lose his mind. It's like, something's wrong. Okay, here it comes. Like, it's the comfort level of like, they felt like they were a couple. Like,
Well, yeah, and there's a great line that I really love is where uh when shit really starts going down, when John's really starting to kick ass,
Mm-hmm.
and and she says to one of her coworkers, she goes, "No one,
Only John.
John can drive someone that crazy."
Yeah, he's like, he's still alive. It's just like, yeah, it's like it is. It's that,
I know my guy, and he's driving them nuts.
absolutely. It's that level of comfort, and it's like his job. And his general idea, his cop, like he does so much, so right, so quickly at the beginning. He's like, okay, he gets out of there. What's the first thing he does? He's scanning he's like, what's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here? And at one point, he checks one of the floors. He says computers. And then he runs up the stairs. He just opens the door, sees computers, shuts the door. And as he's running up, he goes like 33 construction, 34 computers. Like he's inventory. He's like, where do I stand? Where do I stand? Like all the hostages are on the 30th. Nobody else is in the building. They were moving stuff in 31. They're moving, like he's getting a lay of the land before he does anything. He doesn't immediately charge in.
Yeah. And along those same lines, something I love is whenever Sergeant Powell, he's talking to the assistant chief.
Yeah.
I forget his name.
Dwayne T. Robinson.
Yeah. And he's like, this guy's a cop.
Yeah.
He's like, how can you tell?
Yeah.
He's like, I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
things
that is absolutely the truth. Like I can be out at a restaurant, or I'm not a cop anymore, but
just the way people carry themselves.
I can see guys. I'm like, that's the cop.
Yeah. And then you start to look for things and you're like, okay, now that it all adds up. And it's like, does he have something in his back? Well, yeah, he probably has a gun because he's a police officer. Like it's
notice bulges and like the guy in the restaurant, like with his, his back, he doesn't have anything and he's watching
he nothing behind him. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
You can recognize your own.
So this movie was revolutionary as far as the formula. One man against a force, and he's just a guy, and he has to fight off one by one to get to the goal of whatever that goal is. So the Die Hard formula being that goal, I have a little game for you to play. I am going to describe a movie that ripped off the Die Hard formula, and you're going to have to try to tell me the movie. All right.
Okay.
So how about Die Hard on a bus?
Speed.
Yes. So that's exactly what this is going to be like.
Okay.
So
that's pretty good.
Okay. So this one is, so for example, continuing this would be like Die Hard in a airport would be Die Hard 2. But I'll stay away from Die Hard movies. How about Die Hard on a mountain?
On a mountain.
Bad guy, and I've never seen it, and it's probably a complicated plot. Sylvester Stallone.
Ooh.
Cliffhanger.
Oh.
Okay. So that's all right. It's all right. I think we're going to do a little better as we keep going. How about Die Hard on Alcatraz?
The Rock.
Yes. Okay. Die Hard in a hockey arena.
Ooh, a hockey arena.
I don't know if you've seen this movie. It's a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. It's my favorite one of his movies. It's called Sudden Death. It is so dumb. Like he's at the Pittsburgh Penguins game with his kids, and something to do with terrorists, and they have the vice president. He has to be a goalie at one point. It's so stupid. God, it's dumb, but it's a blast to watch. Okay. How about Die Hard on a battleship with Steven Seagal?
Oh, I cannot stand Steven Seagal.
Okay, so this is
the biggest fake.
Okay, so it's the best case scenario of Steven Seagal. It's Under Siege. It's the original Under Siege.
Oh, Under Siege.
Bad guy is Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey are the bad guys.
Yeah.
How about Die Hard on a train with Steven Seagal. Trick question, Under Siege 2. Okay, so how about Die Hard on a Plane with Steven Seagal? Trick question, he dies, executive decision. We talked about that previously. Okay.
I actually heard someone say that was his best movie because he dies the quickest.
15 minutes in, and the rest of the time it's a Kurt Russell movie. It's a great movie.
Actually, I think you said it.
Great movie. I love executive decision. Okay. How about Die Hard on a Plane with a black actor?
Snakes on a Plane.
You took away my next one because I was actually talking about Passenger 57, Wesley Snipes. The next one was going to be Die Hard on a Plane with a black actor with snakes. Now it's the Snakes on a Plane. Okay. Die Hard on a Plane with ex-convicts.
Con Air.
There you go. Okay. Die Hard on a Plane with the president.
Oh shit. Harrison Ford.
Yeah. Come on, you're getting there.
Get off my plane. Air Force One.
Yes. Great Gary Oldman performance. Don't lecture me on the rules of war. Don't. Yes. I remember you always liked that line. And okay, two more. Die Hard in the White House with a black president.
Is that White House Down?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Now, Die Hard in the White House with a white president. It's one of those. It's the Volcano Dante's Peak of years where they both came out. Gerald Butler.
Oh, shit. And I saw that too.
Olympus has fallen.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's the formula and it works because it works. Because half of these movies are pretty decent. Like even the first Under Siege is pretty okay. That formula has worked throughout the years. How familiar are you with the Die Hard franchise out of this? Like, have you seen Die Hard 2, 3, 4, or 5?
I've seen 2.
Okay, so 2 is the one in the airport with
right.
Holly is flying overhead and it's ridiculous. So one of the prisoners from Shawshank is the bad guy in that. He starts out doing naked Tai Chi at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
John Amos is there. Dennis Franz as a cop. A lot of goofy things going on. It truly set the bar for how bad a Die Hard movie could be.
Right.
But 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance, is great. It's as close to as good as this one is.
Does that still have Willis in it?
Yes, it has. All of them have Bruce Willis. So this one is in New York. Die Hard with a Vengeance is the third one. He's in New York.
I'll have to watch that one. I don't think I've seen that one.
That's a really good one because it connects a lot of this. So he's in New York and a guy is blowing up things with these homemade bombs. And Samuel L. Jackson is involved. He's a locksmith that just kind of gets involved accidentally. And they keep targeting McClane and they don't really know why. And it turns out it's a heist and it's Hans's brother doing it.
Oh, okay.
It's Jeremy Irons as Hans's brother. Really good. I really enjoy it. It would be the best of the series if it wasn't for this one. They made a fourth one in the mid to late 2000s called Live Free or Die Hard. It was one of those things before people knew what the internet could actually do. They're like, ooh, we could steal things and change records and all this kind of, I stole your pension like that. Like, okay, well, it's kind of computer hacky stuff. And then they made another one a couple of years ago called A Good Day to Die Hard, which was real bad. But
yeah,
I mean, Die Hard with a Vengeance kind of set the tone and everything else went on from there.
Yeah. And something I like about this movie is there is actually historical context behind it because through the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of fringe terrorist organizations, Weather Underground. And
I mean, Hans talks about it whenever he's making his fake demands. He's like, the Asian Dawn. He's like, I read about him in Time magazine, like all that kind of stuff. Like terrorists were hot.
They were. And there were a lot of like communist or socialist terrorists. There were also right-wing terrorists.
A lot of plane hijackings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Environmental terrorism.
There's always something
popped up back then. And so, it was a common thing.
Yeah.
During that time, there was a lot of fringe groups going on during that time. So.
Okay. So before we get into the true question of this movie is whether it's a Christmas movie, I want to talk about one specific scene, and I want to know your opinion on it. So at one point in the movie, Hans is going to check the explosives on the roof, and he checks it and then jumps down and he runs into McClane, and he fakes an American accent to act like he was in the party. And McClane acts like he's with him, and then he realizes it's Hans and tricks him and gives him a fake gun or an empty gun. And okay, so my question, and the question that is the question of the logic of this movie, how does he know that Hans is Hans? Like, he does everything right. Like, so in the movie, he's like, so you got out of there. Oh, I'm John McClane. He's like, Clay, Bill Clay. And he looks at a directory and it says W.M. Clay, like William Clay. And you're like, okay, he checks out. How does he still know? Is it just intuition? Is it just like, I have a feeling? I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And also like his fake terror, like, no, don't shoot me. Like,
yeah.
I think you can tell, like, oh, this person's pissing themselves, literally, or shitting themselves, or whatever.
Why are they this weird place on the roof? Like, of all the places, like,
yeah. And I was thinking that, I was like, way more people have gone through ventilation vents. As someone who has installed ventilation vents, a grown man in there, you're going down.
I said they're flimsy. They're not like reinforced.
No, it's very thin metal.
Yeah, and I mean,
all it's designed to do is move air. People.
It was a Mythbusters episode. I think they said, okay, is this possible? And what they did, they essentially said, okay, let's make it big enough. Let's make it feasible to have somebody in there. And what they did, they essentially put somebody in there and they had somebody on the other side, and it was extremely loud. It was ka, 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 ka. It was like somebody hitting cymbals. Like, yes. So, I mean, all those kind of fun things.
Yeah. When he's being discreet up there and the guy's like poking it with a gun barrel, it's,
I mean, this movie is as realistic as it can be, but you always have those stretches like jumping off the roof with a fire hose. It's probably not going to work. All that kind of.
I wouldn't try it.
I wouldn't try it. No, I wouldn't. All that kind of stuff. Even to the point of like, if your back's covered in blood, is tape going to stick to you? I mean, so all those kind of things. So the real question of this movie is it a Christmas movie? So it comes out in July. It debuts in July. It has legs, obviously. I associate it with Christmas but it's a California Christmas movie. There's no snow. It's warm. It's not really an aspect of like weather-wise. Nothing says it's Christmas except for the fact that it is physically Christmas. Now there's Al is singing "Let It Snow." Obviously, at the beginning of the movie, Argyle's playing the Run DMC rap song, and it's a Christmas party. But do you view
McClane whistles?
Christmas
music. Obviously, it's a Christmas party. There's Christmas decorations.
Yeah, and I mean all that kind of stuff. And it's everybody's got to tell you that every second it's Christmas. But do you view this as a purely Christmas movie?
So it's funny. I think probably 3 or 4 completely unrelated podcasts that I listen to, this debate
really all keeps coming
occurred.
Up. So I'm usually way on board.
where this guy had Die Hard as a Christmas movie. He had like a shirt, and then another guy had Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. But I personally would argue that two things can be true at once.
I agree. It can be a standalone action movie.
Yep. I would argue the first half of the movie is a Christmas movie, and the second half is your traditional shoot 'em up, bang 'em up action.
Yeah. And I would agree with you because, I'm usually way on board with, like, I watch it every Christmas. It's just it's part of my routine. It's the list of Christmas movies. It's one I watch. But if it's on in the middle of summer, I'm not going to not watch it. So like if Elf is a good example, if it's on in the summer, I'm not going to watch Elf.
Right.
Like it's a decidedly.
What the hell is this doing on?
Exactly. It's like, oh, Christmas Story on. It's like, it's April. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I would argue that it's 50-50.
Yeah, I agree. And I felt
it can stand alone either way.
I felt less
That's
inclined.
fine.
This is the first time in a while I'd seen it and gone like, okay, I much more get it. And, even the stuff like, Hans is, the vault opens and Ode to Joy comes on and then Theo says Merry Christmas and, all that kind of fun stuff. So, I mean, there's all that. The atmosphere is there, but like you said, it doesn't stop me from not wanting to watch it in Christmas times. I would never watch A Christmas Story outside of the 2 weeks around Christmas. There's no, why would you?
Yeah, I think this is an action movie set around Christmas.
I agree with you. But
so is it a Christmas movie? Yes. Is it an action movie? Yes.
Absolutely.
I think they can stand alone either way, basically.
Yes. I agree with you 100%. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back. All right, we are back. Before we keep going, we talked about it in the opening. The fact that McClane goes this whole movie without shoes, and it's so vital to. I mean, not even the vulnerability. It's like, well, it has that emotional vulnerability, but I mean, I don't want to walk around my house without shoes on. Like,
yeah, that's a real problem for me.
So, I mean, and the reason it is because it's really easy to bleed out of your feet because, as you would imagine, all your blood kind of pulls down your feet a little bit. And you're running around a lot. It's a very vulnerable position.
It is. Feet and hands are very vulnerable. I saw a guy almost bleed to death because he was in a motorcycle accident and went down on his hands and just took all the meat off his hands, and it was basically like slitting his wrist.
So I mean, feet are the same thing. All those that's where they all end up. Yeah. So I mean, just the idea of just running around, not even on the glass, not even all the other stuff. Just imagine running around on the gravel roof or up the stairs. Just So do you recall a few years back, we were going on a fishing trip and I spent the night at your house. Yes.
Do you recall what remained on my feet even asleep?
I believe you wore shoes the whole time.
I did. And I'm on the road all the time and almost always shoes on my feet.
Jake is famous. There are three things that Jake always has: his legs covered, shoes, and a hat. Generally, like, it's very rare for you not to have those three things on you pretty much at all times.
And a knife. And almost always it's a Kershaw.
Did we mention we're open for sponsorship?
That drives me nuts. Like, I've got whatever is the absolute antithesis of a foot fetish.
It's the opposite of that. I get it. I think
I don't want to look at your feet. I don't want to look at my own feet. And I'm like, Yeah. What if Hans Gruber attacks the building you're in
you
and you're barefoot?
you have to stay no pun intended on your toes, like just in case. Keep your shoes on.
I told my wife, I said, literally, if I was in John McCain's position, I would have put my shoes on before I grabbed my gun. Not joking.
He's like, hold on. He's like, hold on there, terrorist. Better have these good thing I have these slip-ons with me. Like, I love that. Like, and it's a very it's a very humanizing aspect to it. You're like, man, what would I do in that situation? I certainly want to run through the glass, but you have to get out of there. So I mean, it's one of those things like, well, I guess I'm gonna die. Like,
man, even if you had house shoes, you would have had
you still would have had a
tremendous advantage.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, even like
that. You would have been so much better if you hadn't fucked up your feet.
These are my go-tos. And look at the reinforcement on this. A piece of glass isn't touching this. I'm good. It's like it's not going to be the funnest thing. Yeah, exactly. They're not going to be the funnest thing to run in. But you know what? I'm not going to be in a bathroom picking glass out of my feet.
No, I'm not going to drag my bloody feet into a bathroom.
And it looks so paralyzing too. Like the idea, like, if you think about it, like if you think of like Home Alone or things like that,
yeah.
It's like, getting burned on your head. Okay. Paint cans the head. Sure. Even if you don't have any problem with spiders, all that kind of stuff. But when he steps through that nail, I'm just like, oh no, that ends my night. Maybe whatever is in that house, I don't want it because I don't want it. That's not worth it.
Listen, folks, don't ever take your shoes off.
Just feet are gross. Don't let anybody tell you any different.
No. Wear good footwear.
Yes.
And always be prepared to be able to run, fight, or hide.
Yes.
Regardless of the ground circumstances.
And I mean, even hanging from the roof from a fire hydrant, his feet are bloody and gross on glass. I'm just like, just the whole time, just not very pleasant. Yes.
And I also hate heights.
So this is just not a situation you want to be in.
Nah. I was on a 12-foot ladder this week.
We talked about the Christmas Vacation episode about falling off, and look what happened.
It was 2 days later. I fell off a fucking ladder.
Literally.
Fractured my wrist, dislocated my thumb, and then what else is I gonna? There was something else funny about that.
Well, I mean,
so I took anti-inflammatory pills after. I mean, it was swole up like
sure.
You've seen that trick, like where they blow up a medical glove like a balloon.
Yeah,
that's about what it looked like. So I took these anti-inflammatories and I took them on an empty stomach.
Oh
and
no!
It put me on my ass, and then I thought, I've got to eat so I can take my back pills. And I was like, God damn it, I should have ate before I took those. But my wrist didn't hurt. I just wasn't conscious for a while.
Oh, PSA to all you people out there. Always wear shoes. Be careful. Be careful on ladders. We save lives.
Don't get on ladders. Just stay off.
All right. Every week I go through the filmography of a filmmaker and put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. It is time for Poll for a Dumbass. And today we are going over the career of the main man himself, Mr. Bruce Willis. This is his first big movie, as we said. Has a long and storied career. We wish him the best of health these days. He has recently been diagnosed with aphasia, which is essentially it's a trauma either induced by head trauma or a stroke, more likely, where you essentially can't talk and can't remember anything. We talked a couple of weeks ago. We talked about Shelley Duvall getting her Razzie nomination rescinded. Last year, Bruce Willis got a Razzie nomination for, I think, the 12 movies he did in the 1 year. And there's a system. I guess I think he's a Russian oligarch or something. He'll pay one star like $1 million to be in a movie for 10 minutes. They'll put him on the poster and then kind of make the movie for really cheap around it. Well, Willis was needing the money because I think he knew his career was about to be over. So he was in a lot of these, and the Razzies gave him a nomination for worst supporting actor for all these different movies. They rescinded that after they found out about his aphasia diagnosis. So, best wishes to him going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
That sucks, but yeah, I mean,
that sounds tough. Gosh.
And when I go through his filmography, as we'll go through here, every time I'm like, man, I forgot about that one. Man, I like him in that one too. Man, he's good. Like, he's got a lot of hits. Now, don't get me wrong, he's got a lot of misses, but I mean, you can't win them all. So starts with Die Hard, does a little. I just want to mention he was the voice of the baby in Look Who's Talking. I won't mention that one, but then makes Die Hard 2 years after this one. The first one I want to mention, I don't know if you've seen it, has a very memorable opening scene on a football game where a guy shoots 3 people on the field. The Last Boy Scout.
Yes,
I
have seen that actually. Yeah, just specifically because of that scene.
Because that scene specifically, he's really good in it. He's does his charming Bruce Willis thing, very up his alley. The thing I like about Bruce Willis, a lot of what he does throughout the years, is he doesn't do it very often, but every once in a while he'll take a chance. It's kind of like Adam Sandler. Like, he'll do his comedy, he'll do his thing, what he does. And then out of nowhere, he's like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And you're like, man, Adam Sandler's pretty good. And Bruce Willis does that. You
miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
And he takes some shots, and, sometimes you make Hudson Hawk and other times. But this one in 1992, one of the favorites, I think, of our mother, Death Becomes Her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good one. He plays a real sheepish guy. Like, he's not like very not Bruce Willis.
Yeah, it's very not his typical role.
It's why I like when he takes those type of shots. It's like, well, that's not something you expect, but he did really well in it. The next year, probably, it's probably his most famous, a role he doesn't necessarily. You don't really signify him with this movie, but you forget he's in it, but he's really good in it. It's Pulp Fiction. Have you not seen Pulp Fiction?
No, I've seen Pulp Fiction. I just don't really remember him.
You remember this, exactly. So like, you remember Uma Thurman, you remember John Travolta, you remember, and there's a third of the movie where he's a boxer and he's trying to get away. And him and Ving Rhames are taken down to that basement and try to be raped. And like, he's not bad. He doesn't do anything. It's a very Bruce Willis type role just in this movie. Like, I don't know why he's so forgettable I guess it's just so much interesting happening. And that's just the lack of. There's quite a bit of star power in that. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. There's just a lot going on in that movie.
Yeah. And that's Bruce Willis is not the thing you think of, even though he's really good at it. So having, he's in Pulp Fiction. It kind of resurrects his career at that point because he had a really rough 1994, but then he comes back in 1995 with Die Hard with a Vengeance. And then my personal favorite movie with Bruce Willis in it, though not necessarily my favorite Bruce Willis performance, 12 Monkeys. Have you ever seen 12 Monkeys?
I haven't.
It is.
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
It's great. It's trying a lot of stuff. It's time travel. It's Brad Pitt going for it, young. Like, it's good movie. Like, a lot of interesting aspects to it. Kind of the time travel thing. It's always fun. But really recommend 12 Monkeys. But following 12 Monkeys and Die Hard with a Vengeance, he's kind of back on track. And in 1997 has a double feature. Have you ever seen The Fifth Element?
Yes.
It's another one of those where you're like, he does
tits.
Yes, he's PG-13 boobs. Yes. And
there's 3 of them. You get a bonus.
No. That you're thinking of Total Recall.
Oh, never mind.
Well,
God, I just pulled an Appaloosa slash Hidalgo.
no. It's fair. That's why you're the common man. You don't like, you assume it's like, hey, boobs. You automatically assumed boobs. So, and then you just associate the two.
That's where I went.
No, Fifth Element. I think you have seen the Fifth Element, probably. Mila Jovovich and
Orange Hair.
Yes. Multipass. Yeah.
Yes.
So, good movie. And another one, just like Air Force One, where Gary Oldman is going for it and having a lot of fun with it. The same year, I think this is a movie much more up your alley. I think our grandfather was a big fan of this one. How about The Jackal?
Yes.
Him and
Richard Assassin.
Yes, Richard Gere with a ridiculous Irish accent, but Bruce Willis having a blast being a bad guy. A lot of fun with it.
In Richard Gere's defense, how good is your Irish accent going to be with gerbils stuck up your ass?
This podcast does not endorse nor say anything. I don't know. Just trying to.
Please don't put rodents in your rectum.
It is probably something you should probably not do. So 97, Fifth Element, The Jackal. 98, up to that point, had his biggest box office success, and that's with Armageddon.
Of course.
Very, very not good movie with a very, very good Billy Bob Thornton performance. He's great in it. But the movie in general, it's so dumb. It's just like you're just watching, it's like, God, this is stupid.
My whole problem with Armageddon was, okay, our dad worked in the oil industry.
Yep.
His entire career.
100%. Yep.
Very talented engineer. But
I know what you're going to say. Yes.
Wouldn't it be easier to train an astronaut to be a driller than to train a driller to be an astronaut?
Fans, if you have not seen it, and Jake, I would suggest you to do the same. Go to YouTube, go to Armageddon Ben Affleck commentary. And on the Armageddon DVD, they do the commentary over the movie. And Ben Affleck goes on there, and he has an Oscar-winning performance in this commentary because he goes and is like, "This is dumb. This is really stupid." And he,
I'm sure his boss has appreciated that.
Well, he goes on, and he goes up to he said, "I recounted the story," and this is in mid-20s Affleck, so he's full of bravado. So he said at one point he goes up to the director, he's like, "Wouldn't it be easier to train astronauts how to be oil drillers?" And the director goes,
"Yeah."
He said, "Ben, shut the fuck up." And and he goes, "Okay, I guess that's the end of that conversation."
All right.
But Armageddon.
How much is my check again?
Exactly. Just like you see my nice pearly whites now that I have, since I have Hollywood money, I got huge fake veneers. The thing about Armageddon, it was a massive hit, made over $500 million. It was a huge hit. A precursor.
It's something that I know is stupid, but if it's on, I'm like,
I'm going to watch it too. I agree.
I'll watch it.
Very prescient the same year. A movie I will always watch. It was Arab terrorist targeting New York for the sake of terror. The Siege in 1998.
Yep.
With Denzel Washington. A very like the fact that it was made in 1998 was creepy.
Almost, predictive.
It's weird. Like they're Arab
in
terrorists.
Hindsight, it is strange.
And they're Arab terrorists. There are megalomaniacal Americans trying to push narratives based on these terrorist actions. Like there's so many things that go in really strange directions. Like the fact that it was 3 years before 9/11 is wild.
Right. What did you guys know?
Exactly. Very good movie. I like the movie though. Okay, so he has hit after hit after hit, lots of hits on the way. And then in 1999, he makes the movie that makes the most money he has ever made and will never make again. It's The Sixth Sense.
Of course.
A great film and a great performance. Great performance by him. Again, not a Bruce Willis performance, a subdued, quiet psychologist.
Yeah. No action.
No action. Killed by Donnie Wahlberg.
Really. Yeah.
I mean, great movie. One I haven't like. It's kind of lost a little bit of its luster, I guess, just because of Shyamalan's kind of up and down career. But I haven't seen it so long. I need to go back and rewatch it just to be like, man, because at the time it was a phenomenon.
Well, I mean, at the time, just whenever he realizes he's a fucking ghost, I'm sorry. I don't care if it's cheesy or anything like that. It was
insane. It was the twist to end twist. You're like, yes, exactly. So Sixth Sense sends him into a whole new plane of fame. And he's had this long career. Sixth Sense makes a ton of money. And then he goes on a couple runs of some really interesting movies. Did the whole 9 yards the next year. Do you know the whole 9 yards?
Yeah.
Probably one of the best examples of the friends, non-Jennifer Aniston, who have been successful in a movie. Matthew Perry in that movie is a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun. Yeah. Amanda Pete's really great. How about the next year? You see the movie Bandits? I think we might have talked about this when we did Billy Bob Thornton's Pull for a Dumbass. Bandits is Billy Bob Thornton, Bruce Willis, and Cate Blanchett. Those two are the two guys are bank robbers, and she kind of just gets wrapped up in it. It's kind of a love triangle. Good, fun flick if you get the chance. Reunites also with M. Night Shyamalan for Unbreakable.
Yes,
a movie I've probably only seen once. I'm not
I've
sure.
only seen it once.
And you know, a lot of people are big on the this is actual, and like forget the Sixth Sense, Unbreakable is his best movie. I'm like, okay, sure. So kind of staying more in his lane at this point in his career. How about 2002's Hart's War with him and Colin Farrell? Yes. That's a POW movie?
Yes. I watched that on physical DVD whenever I moved. I had just moved into an apartment and my cable wasn't set up yet.
And you're like, I got it. And you rented it?
But yeah. And but it was one of those things like where they're like, we'll be there between 9:30 and 7. Like
you're like, could be any time, and then 6:45 rolls around, they show up. Yeah.
So I went and rented like 4 or 5 DVDs, and that was one of them. That's how I remember that.
So Hart's War back in 2002. Another war movie. Not like Hart's War. It's probably the closest. It's like there's a lot of movies post Saving Private Ryan that went a little harder in the paint than other war movies. How about 2003's Tears of the Sun?
Yes.
Good one. It's they're in Africa somewhere. Trying to rescue and you know, a lot of good character actors in that. Monica Bellucci, Cole Hauser from Yellowstone's in that too. Solid flick. Does a couple sequels, did a whole 10 yards. We won't mention that. I want to mention this one in 2004. How familiar are you with the Ocean's movies?
I think only like the first 2.
Okay, so you've seen Ocean's. Have you seen Ocean's 12?
Yeah,
with Bruce Willis. Do you remember him in it?
Very, very vaguely.
Okay, so it's so like at the time it was almost too smart for everybody to be like, this is dumb. In hindsight, it's hilarious. So Julia Roberts' character is posing as Julia Roberts in Italy for the sake of this con, and they go into a hotel. And Bruce Willis is there, and he's playing Bruce Willis. And he sees her and assumes she's the real Julia Roberts. And then they kind of have to play like, I'm Julia Roberts. And he's real fun with it. And everybody's kind of like, he makes fun of like Matt Damon comes up and said, oh, I knew the whole time he was a ghost in The Sixth Sense. And he's like, yeah, that's why the movie grossed $1 billion. And he's a lot of fun with it.
I will say in that movie, they do a good job of, making fun of themselves and celebrity in general.
They do. He's made a long history of playing cops in various situations. How about the one I know you see, or you tried to see this. I don't know if you ever got around to it. You tried to watch it in a movie theater and it was sold out. But how about 2005's Hostage? I'm going to go on a limb, and he's a hostage negotiator. It's an okay movie. It does some interesting things. We were in California at the time. I was working in a movie theater, and we were able to get free tickets to all these movies. And you and our dad were trying to go watch this Hostage, and y'all ended up having to go watch a different movie with me and our mom, because Hostage was sold out. So I wasn't sure if you'd ever seen it.
I'm not sure I've ever seen it.
Okay, so another cop movie. This one much better. Reuniting with the not the director of Sin City, a different director. Getting a little around myself, but playing a older cop, for once actually leaning into his age. 2006, 16 Blocks. An exceptional movie. I once went on vacation with a girlfriend of mine. We showed up and we were so zapped from our trip. We're like, man, I don't think we could check in the hotel. So we randomly found a movie, and it was 16 Blocks. And we're like, maybe we can fall asleep in there. And we both ended up really enjoying it. It was a great movie. And one of my favorite Bruce Willis performances. Does Live Free or Die Hard, the fourth Die Hard movie later that year. How about probably the most like cartoonish action he had at this point? How about 2010's Red? Retired Extremely Dangerous. Him and Morgan Freeman and John Malkovich and Helen Mirren. A lot of fun. It's like there used to be CIA assassins. Good movie. I seek it out. It's if it's on TV and you see Red, go throw it on. It's Red. Just called Red. Now I mentioned earlier how it was how 12 Monkeys was my favorite Bruce Willis movie. My favorite Bruce Willis performance. A movie I remember liking and rewatched this last week because of how much I like him in it. It's a Wes Anderson movie. It's called Moonrise Kingdom. I'm not going to include it in the list, but I just want to mention it. It's another one where Bruce Willis gets out of his comfort zone. He's a sweet, quirky sheriff of this little coastal town in New England. He's a sweet guy. He ends up adopting a kid. Really, really great performance by him. I was reading about his aphasia diagnosis, and I had to read that, and I'm like, oh, I got to go watch the Moonrise Kingdom because of how good he is. Now, that same year, Moonrise Kingdom, very quirky. Wes Anderson in general is a quirky guy. I'm going to eventually make you do a Wes Anderson movie just for the sake of your sanity. Just kind of what he does. He does some weird stuff, but anyway, same year, 2012. How about Looper?
Yeah.
Looper.
I liked it very much.
I like a lot of what it was trying. Like it deals with time travel, and at one point, Bruce Willis meeting Joseph Gordon-Levitt, his younger self. It's like, I don't want to talk about time travel. We're going to be sitting here making diagrams out of straws. Like, oh, okay, cool. Like, we're just going to move all that kind of stuff. He's good in it. Reprises his role from the couple of years later, reprises his role from Unbreakable in the movie Glass. The last thing I have saw him in, and I really liked him in, was a movie directed by Edward Norton called Motherless Brooklyn from 2019. It is it's like Edward Norton has Tourette's, and he is a detective essentially, and Bruce Willis plays his mentor. Willis is really good, and I really like the movie in general. Some people didn't like it. Me and my wife both watched it, and both were big fans. So Motherless Brooklyn might not be a bad idea to go. Motherless Brooklyn, yes. Okay. So Motherless Brooklyn was in 2019. That was his last theatrically released film. Since then, he has gone 26 films, just the little cameos and that kind of stuff, yet to be released, just because of, I guess, trying to get his affairs in order. Like I said, we wish the best to Bruce Willis. Definitely. But you did great. 15 out of 20. That's our.
Did I do that well?
You did that.
Felt like I was doing well.
12 Monkeys, Bandits, Hostage, Red, Motherless Brooklyn. Everything else is a yes.
Okay.
Pretty good. I'm slightly impressed. So that does it for Pull for a Dumbass. Well done, son.
Hmm.
Think it's about that time. Each week, each episode, instead of me steering the conversation, Jake peppers me with a series of questions that I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's trivia, sometimes it's not. What is it, buddy?
Step into the hot box, man.
I am
Get in there.
I'm in there, and
Have a seat. I'll get you some water. You want Coke?
Hey guys, you got any Coke? Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm ready for you.
All right. So the majority of the terrorists in this movie are German.
Yes.
What is the German word for shit?
I believe that would be Scheiße.
Correct.
Yes.
How about no?
9.
Okay. How about danger or warning?
It's going to be a word I know. I just can't associate it to danger or warning. It's going to be like Achtung.
Achtung.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Nice.
I don't even like U2, and that they saved me there. They have a
You two did.
they have an album called Achtung Baby, and I don't listen to U2 at all. I don't like their music. I just know that is what it kind of means.
What it's called.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's your favorite supporting character in this movie? Obviously, you've got your bigger names there. Who's your
Yes.
favorite supporter?
I'm a big. Okay, so I want a little shout out to Grandel Bush and Robert Davey, Big and Little Johnson, the FBI agents. I like both of them, especially Robert Davey. Just like, this is Agent Johnson. No, the other.
No,
one.
the other one.
or they're whenever they're in the helicopter.
There were two Millers at my police department. I can't tell you how many. No, the other one.
Or one of my favorite lines in the whole movie is they're in the helicopter heading towards the top, and he goes, "Yeah, just like fucking Saigon, eh, Slick?" He's like, "I was in junior high, dickhead."
Yeah.
I really like that.
And on that note, I was 4 when this movie was released, and you were 2.
I was 2. Yes, exactly. Just like Saigon, eh? No.
Our younger brother was not yet born at the time of the release.
He was
a month away.
A month away, yeah. So, but I'm gonna go with Clarence Gilliard playing Theo. He's he's part of a terrorist organization, but he doesn't threaten anybody. He is very good at his job. He's funny. I mean, it's like, you can break the code. It's like, well, you didn't bring me along for my glowing personality. Like,
right. Yeah.
just like
He is good.
adding more than what's on the page. Like, on the page, I bet you Theo was a pretty shallow, nothing character. And just the little things this movie does, like the Asian guy who, when they're about to shoot the SWAT guys, he steals a Crunch bar, like, for no reason. It's like, he looks around. It's like, you have murdered people and you're worried about stealing a candy bar. Like,
right.
It's great. Like, all those little things like that. Like, a lot of these actors really transcend what they do on the page. And Clarence Gilliard is probably the one that does it the most.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I would say I got to go Reginald VelJohnson.
Yes. Al is great. He is great.
He's really the hero of this movie, if you ask me.
Absolutely. He does everything. He doesn't make a mistake, except for, like,
yeah.
And
he admits to previous mistakes.
And one of my favorite shots in this film is the cinematography is really cool. But so whenever he's like walking the floor and he's like walking down the hallway and he says, "To hell with this." Well, like, in the foreground right here, it's like really close and you can see a guy holding a gun. Like, he takes a couple steps further, he's going to die. Yeah. Like, and he's just like, "Nope, I'm going to stop and turn around." It's like, hell with this. I'm going home. Like, and like, everything he does is cool. His negotiation is good. All that kind of stuff is like, yeah, I agree with you. He's great. I
love Sergeant Powell.
Sergeant Powell's great. Yes. It makes a little cameo in number 2 as well. I
also kind of noticed, it seems like Bruce Willis calls him pal several times, and I'm like, is that his name or is he saying P-A-L?
Pal. Yeah.
You know,
It's a pal.
because he is a pal.
No,
to him.
well, but he calls
He's
him Al.
his only friend.
He calls him Al a lot too.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's both. Yeah.
All right. So I noticed. So John McClane utilizes elevators and elevator shafts
Yes, he
a
does.
lot. Like,
Very much so.
that's a big part of this movie.
Yep.
They're obviously in a skyrise, a skyscraper. Have you ever been stuck in an elevator?
I can't believe I'm going to tell this story. I've never been stuck in an elevator, but I've caused an elevator to be stuck. So, at my old job, I will it'll remain nameless just for the sake of this story, just so. But anyway, so there was an elevator that it was only like 1 or 2 floors, but whenever somebody was in there, we realized if you put just kind of like hit it with your shoulder and it's going up, it'll stop briefly and then keep going. And so somebody told me this, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I had some friends in there, so I did it, and I put too much shoulder into it, and it stopped it, and it stopped it cold. And I think it was the elevator didn't move for an hour. Nobody was stuck in there for like hours. I think they were in there for 5 minutes, and they got it and they got down. But I mean, like, I ran away, and like I was like, I'm pretty sure I'd have probably been fired. But I've never been stuck in an elevator, but I have caused others to be stuck in an elevator. Have you been stuck in an elevator?
I have.
You have. How was it?
Well, here was my biggest problem. So the police department I worked for, they're headquartered in a very old building, and the elevators are equally old, and they were notorious about. I mean, they were horrible.
Sure.
Well, because I mean, they would just break down on you, and then you're in between floors, and I got stuck in between floors. Had to push the rescue button. This is as a cop.
You're like, well, all my training is not doing me any good.
Yeah, because like whenever Bruce Willis, like,
he does it very cleanly. He's like, oh, this is all I got to do. Open it up, and dink, and it's like, there's none of that.
I never got that training.
Or even the Silence of the Lambs, like, oh, pull the thing down, climb up. Nope, that's not there either. Like, it's not really how elevators work.
Yeah. But my biggest problem was I had a dip in.
Oh no.
And I didn't have a spit cup. And I'm in an elevator. And so I was like spitting down the crack.
So there's
like trying to shove it down there.
There's a famous video of a guy getting stuck in an elevator, and he's able to open the doors, but it's concrete. Like he can't do anything with it. And he's there for, I think, 8 hours, and he pees like 3 times. And he pees 3 times just like through the door. He's like, well, what am I going to do? I got to pee. Like,
yeah. And you got to eat some crow whenever the fire department lets you out of your own.
What's all this? He's like, what? I was there for a while. Like, who knows how long it's going to be there?
Let's see. Okay. At one point, they mention Helsinki syndrome.
Yes. Helsinki, as in Helsinki,
Finland.
Finland. I know. It's always makes you laugh.
What is, that's not a thing.
No. Yeah.
But what is the actual syndrome called whenever hostages become connected to their hostage takers?
I all I think of is it's not it. I think of the Florence Nightingale syndrome. Like I know that's not what it is, but that's always what I think of. That's when nurses or doctors grow with their patients. I almost had it. It's not Copenhagen, is it? It's
stay in the Nordic.
I'm almost there. So it's
stay up there.
Yes, it's Oh man, this is killing
Just
me.
think capitals. Scandinavia.
It's not Reykjavik. It's
No, too far over.
It's not
Other side of the Atlantic.
okay. So Stockholm syndrome. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. There was a hostage taking incident in Stockholm, and basically many of the hostages became
Friendly,
sympathetic and
yeah.
compassionate.
Yeah, I mean, like
compassionate
you've
towards
seen the Negotiator, like great example of that, of like, okay, I understand his plight. Now the great thing this film does is like they're talking about the Helsinki syndrome, and it's like they're growing closer as they're dragging Ellis's dead body out. Like it's like nobody's getting even close. Nobody's even liking anybody. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I thought that was funny. The Helsinki syndrome. I was like,
yeah, that's a good one. I forgot that was even Stockholm. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think? So we mentioned, I believe a couple episodes ago, about gunfights in movies and accurate round counts and everything like this. This was one of the greatest offenders I've ever watched.
Really?
There's one scene where everyone's just hosing it down.
Is it well, I would imagine the shooting the glass scene, those two just unload into that glass with unrelenting, just like, well, I'm going to have an unlimited amount of bullets, so I'm going to knock out every glass I can. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Have you ever, on that note, have you ever shot a fully automatic weapon?
I have not shot a fully automatic weapon. I have, it's always been semi, with you or with others, or, I'm not sure I've seen, like, been in the presence of a fully automatic weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously as a police officer, you're around it occasionally.
Yeah. And usually, I mean, the fully automatic weapons were reserved for special units and stuff.
Sure.
But a couple times on the range. So the MP5, the submachine gun.
Yes.
It's in a lot of it. I've fired one of those on full auto with a 30 round mag. They go like that. It's like,
yeah, they're just done. Yeah. I mean, like if they're firing, let's say 6 rounds a minute, 6 rounds a second, that's 5 seconds. Like that's just doesn't take very long.
The cyclical rate of H&K MP5, which is what those weapons are, is 800 rounds per minute.
800 rounds per minute. So, okay. I mean, you just do the quick math of like, okay, well, if that's the case, then 30 rounds just is not going to take very long to get rid of.
No, I think it was like, I think I did the math, but it was like 20 seconds.
Yeah, that sounds right. Like,
or something. And I thought that sounded generous to me.
So, I mean, like if 800 rounds a minute, every 3 seconds is 40 rounds. So it's probably 2.5. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, never trust my math.
But still, I mean, they're giving mags that have 30, 40 rounds. Maybe they don't have gun belts.
No, it's the MP5s. It's typically either a 15 round mag or a 30 round mag.
Yeah.
I think most of those are 30 round mags, but and 800 rounds per minute, like that's not realistic. Like you're not gonna fire. That's just the rate.
Well, I mean, you see those videos. You see those videos of
blow
guns
up a barrel.
Yeah, exactly. You see those videos of barrels melting, and yes, they're not designed to do that. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Let's see. Worst foot injury you ever had?
Broke my foot when I was 13. I was playing basketball. A middle school basketball team got hit in the air, landed on my foot, and it kind of went out. Just kind of limped to the side and was like, okay, well, that kind of hurt, but I'll be all right. And then I couldn't walk for about a day. Got it x-rayed and I was just a straight fractured, like didn't have to do anything crazy, but I was off my foot for 6 weeks. So that wasn't like, as a 13-year-old, made my arms look good, but I didn't really think of like my foot. It was blinding pain whenever you step on it. And
oh yeah.
And I've had tendonitis in my foot from overrunning, just, too much work on it. And that's very unpleasant, but that eventually goes away. I also had a thing probably 6 months ago. It had a very fancy name, but essentially just comes down to like a bone bruise, where essentially whenever I would do any exercise, I would just fall flat. Like I would, if I was up high, I would just land as opposed to swing down and come from a more reasonable distance. And I'd start doing that so often, it felt like I had a golf ball in my foot.
Yeah.
And it sucked. It was very unpleasant. Foot injuries, they're almost like back injuries. Like, man, when you get them, you can't think of much else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're tough. That's, I used to run all the time. And so I've just I don't think I've ever broke my foot or anything like that. But yeah, just a sprained ankle or something. It's just, golly, I'm just trying to walk to the bathroom here, and
I have a friend
who collapse.
I have a friend who played high school football, and he was tackling a guy, and he had him by the foot, and he had wrapped him around, and as he wrapped, his Achilles popped.
Yeah,
and he said the guy he was tackling said not only did his Achilles pop, it popped right next to his ear. Said it sounded like a gunshot.
Yeah,
said, "Pah!" and he just hears "Ah!" So I mean, like, and I have a couple friends who have popped Achilles, and each one of them are just like, no, it is terrible. And
I've heard something about that, is that they're under such tension that a lot of times
it'll roll up like
into the calf.
Oof,
like that. I'd rather not do that.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, final one for you.
Okay.
All right. Like I mentioned, Sergeant Powell, he's probably my favorite supporting actor.
Yep.
And John McCain needs that lifeline.
Yes.
Over the radio.
Yes.
He's his only way to get resources, help, communicate on what's going on. Yes. Oh, definitely that, because obviously
pretty fucking unappreciated, Al.
Yeah, I'm feeling yeah. Obviously, pretty much everyone else is a dick to him, and so he's really his emotional support system, and I mean communication, and ultimately physical support system.
Sure.
And whenever they get out of the building and it's said and done, they haven't seen each other, but they recognize each other. And so who is your Sergeant Powell? Who has pulled your ass out of a pickle when they didn't have to?
I've been in some tough situations in my life where I've had friends that I didn't expect to show up. I had a friend I had a rough relationship fall apart, and I had a friend who was there empathetically. Like, I was like, man, it's never really been something I expected him to show up for. A guy named Toby used to be a boss of mine. Showed up and really like kind of helped me get through it, and empathize with it. And it's not that he wasn't always my friend. It was just I didn't expect him to come through in the way that he came through. And it's always something I'll always remember. It was like, you know what? It's like Toby really was there when he didn't have to be. Like, obviously, like you or our parents or my wife or something, it's like, oh, well, we have that bond over some, but it's like Toby didn't have to do that. And he really got me through a tough time that otherwise if he was under no obligation to do it. And if he didn't, I wouldn't have ever thought any less of him than I do today. Like, I wouldn't be looking around going like, man, he could have really helped me out. It was something he went above and beyond to do. And so that's why he's kind of the one I go to. So thanks, Toby. I appreciate you out there.
Hell yeah. Good on you, Toby.
Absolutely.
That's when you find out who's legit.
Who doesn't have to do it.
They don't have to do it. And you're in the shit and they just jump in the shit with you.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Shout out, Toby. I hope you're listening. If you're not, subscribe, like, rate, review.
Yep. Hey, Johnny B and Q, you know who you are.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you for always jumping in the shit with me.
Everybody's got their people. They don't need that. They went out of their way, and we all appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
I owe my life to Johnny. So,
am I finally out of the hot box, Jake?
Yeah, you can leave.
All right. That just about does it for this episode of the Film Critic, the Common Man. Thank you so very much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at NebHasBeen and Letterboxd and Neb810 on Instagram at Ben Miller Movies. Check out my website, Ice Cream Freaks. More reviews this week. Oscar contenders, Women Talking, and Babylon got reviews coming out this week. You can follow my other writing in the Film Experience and Cinema Scholars, going back and forth, doing a bunch of stuff over there. Find me on other pods as I'm the David Lewis of podcasting. Jake, where can the people find you? Shoeless in the middle of a glass-strewn room?
Definitely not there. Let me just say this. Anywhere you find me, I'm not shoeless.
Not shoeless. The lack of shoeless Jake Miller. I mean,
no, I have quality footwear on at all times.
Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Critic Common Pod, and please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so very much for listening these last couple of days. Our Christmas vacation episode is our highest watched show ever.
Yeah.
We very much appreciate it. Thanks to everybody.
Seriously.
Mostly because of how Jake laughs at whenever I said Peter Hole, but regardless, anyway.
I will say when I fell off the goddamn ladder, my Peter Hole wasn't open.
Oh man. We're that kind of podcast, people. We got some more Christmas going, and as we mentioned it earlier in the week, earlier in the episode, we're going to do Elf next week. Should be a much more fun, more wholesome time. But regardless, it should be a good one. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks so much.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick.